Hello and welcome back to Reading with Mo. Today I have a giant book video for you guys today. Today we're going to be wrapping up and talking about and reviewing all the books that I read over the summer months. So for July, August, and September, and boy do I have a lot of books that I want to share with you guys. I attempted to read in total 39 books over the past 3 months, which is crazy. I definitely am on a good reading streak right now. I'm definitely not in a reading slump. I'm in the opposite of whatever a reading slump is. So let's just get straight into them. I'm not going to talk about each one too long, so this video isn't all day. We'll be talking about them in the order of DNFs, I believe, and then we'll go all the way and save the best for last. But before we get into the individual reviews, I want to give you a little bit of stats and numbers for how my reading went for the year so far. Well, not for the year, for the summer reading season. I have a couple of awards I want to give out first. First, for the best book of the summer. And the best book of the summer for me was Finding Grace. I'll get more into it as I talk about my 5-star reads, which, spoiler alert, there were only 2 for this summer out of the 39, so that was not the best stat. And then we have the worst book of the summer, which for me, I would give this award to The French Honeymoon, which I will speak about more when I tell you about my 2-star ratings. Overall, I had about a pretty even 50-50 split between books that came out in 2025 that I read and books that were published previously within the past. Most of them fell, I feel like, within the past like 5-ish years. I would really love for the next quarter or last quarter of the year to read some more classics, because I was looking at the books that I read over the summer and only 2 of them were books that could be considered classics. One of them was the memoir of Jane Austen written by her nephew, and that one was published back in like 1870. And then I read one called Plum Bun. That one was published in 1928. So those are the only 2 books that can be considered classics that I read. So I would love to read more classics going into the fall winter season. Of the 39 books I read, 33% of them, meaning 13 of those books that I attempted to read or read, were books that came from my shelves. The other 2/3 were books that I just checked out from my library on the Libby app. So while I do love making use of my libraries, everything on there is free, I need to read some more books that are on my shelves. So hopefully that percentage will be a little better in the next quarter. Right now, I'm trying to get down my unread books, which are about 1/3 of the books that I own. So currently, that number is at 117, which we have to do something about. So I will definitely be working on that for my next goal. And I've been doing good at like not buying too many books lately, but I mean, I still buy them here and there, of course. Of the 13 books that I read from my shelves, though, I'm only unhauling 2. So I think that goes to show that I have really good books on my shelves that I just need to get around to reading. But it's okay, even if I put them off reading for a while, they're still good, and I'm still enjoying them, even though they are some of them books that I purchased a while ago. Of the 26 books I read that were not from my physical shelves, only 5 of them are books that I've added onto my like list of books I would like to eventually purchase. I don't need to purchase them right this second, but I would like to add them to my collection. Only 5 of them, and I'll just show you guys. Those ones were The Art of a Lie, Finding Grace, Jane Austen's Bookshelf, Sing Unburied Sing, and This Could Be Us. Those 5 books I'm looking to find either used, or I'll just buy something online, copies that I can also add to my home library, because I feel like these are books I am highly likely to want to revisit again or to have on my shelves to remind me of them. And then one more stat before we get into all of the reviews. Of the 39 books I attempted to read in the past 3 months, only 4 of them were nonfiction. So I'm hoping that also in the next quarter of the month, I will be reading more nonfiction. Nonfiction made up 10% of what I read, which I don't need it to be a huge chunk of my reading, but there are some that are on my shelves and other new releases that have come out that I would like to check out. So if that number was, say, closer to like 20-ish% in the next quarter, I think that would be really good. But it should be pretty easy, because in November, I'm going to be taking part in Nonfiction November, and in that month, it'll be easy for me to rack up a lot of nonfiction reads. Let's get into the DNFs so far. I had 7 for the last 3 months, 7 books that I did not finish for one reason or the other. I did have a July and August wrap up. I did not post I think I did post August I could be wrong. Maybe I didn't. But I know for sure I did not post September wrap up. So this is going to kind of encompass that. I don't think I'm going to make a standalone just because I'm ready to move on to these next months. I'll be including throughout this video the books that I read in September. So that can be counted as my whole summer reading wrap up. So DNFs made up about 18% of my reading for the summer months. So about a quarter, almost like a quarter of the books that I read, I DNF'd, or attempted to pick up and read, I DNF'd, which I'm not mad about. I feel like I am getting better at putting books down when I'm not enjoying them. These books I probably would have ended up given a 1 or 2, maybe generous 3-star rating, but there's just so many other books I'm so excited for that I need to stop finishing books just because I started them. Especially when I get them from the library and I have no actual investment in needing to finish them. There's no reason to finish the books if I'm not enjoying them that much. So the 7 that I DNF'd, the first is The Safekeep by Yael van der Wooden. This book won the Women's Prize. I really loved it in the beginning, but it just went in a direction I wasn't expecting and wasn't enjoying, so didn't finish that one. Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson. I had such high hopes for this book. It's the first book in a very long and extensive, something like 20 something books, epic fantasy series, and this was my second or third attempt at the first book and I just couldn't get into it. So I decided to cut my losses here instead of investing in a huge series that I didn't really have that much interest in, which is really sad because the broken binding has some beautiful additions that I was really hoping to put on my shelves. Jamaica Road by Lisa Smith is a 2025 release that I checked out the audiobook from my library, and I don't think I made it too far into it. I just was kind of bored and I didn't have a super strong attachment to the characters. It was a soft DNF, but on thinking about it more and seeing some other people's reviews recently of the book as well, I think I'm just going to make this a permanent DNF. Just there's too many other books I'm interested in picking up and this one just didn't really hold my attention. I attempted the audiobook for The Grand Paloma Resort by Clavis Natera. This book takes place at a resort in the DR and we are following a couple sisters who are like working on the site. I just felt like I didn't have a strong attachment to any of the characters and I didn't really care about what was going on. I think I DNF'd this one around like a third of the way into the book. Meet Me at the Crossroads by Megan Giddings was me attempting another Megan Giddings book. I read Lakewood when that book came out back in like 2020 and I enjoyed it and I was excited to see what she came up with next because I thought I saw a lot of potential, but I don't know, I just didn't really care for this book. It had to do with these random doors that opened up in places and how some people eventually just like wrote them off. Some people kind of made this like religious cult almost around them. And I just really wanted to eat this book up, but it is speculative fiction and I just didn't really care for the 2 sisters that we were following. I don't know. Most books that I DNF is mainly because I just don't end up having any care at all for what is happening to the characters. All Consuming Why We Eat the Way We Eat Now by Ruby Tando is a 2025 nonfiction release that I picked up the audiobook for. I actually got like pretty far into this one, maybe like 50% before I decided to put it down. I was just kind of bored. I didn't feel like I was learning anything that I didn't already know, and maybe I don't know exactly who the audience for this would be for. I feel like there is maybe one, but this one just wasn't for me. What It's Like in Words by Eliza Moss is a book that I received an ARC of when it first came out back in 2024. And I thought I would have enjoyed this a lot more than I did. I have the physical copy of it and I also checked out the the audiobook for this one from my library, but same thing as I said for the other DNFs. I just didn't really care for the main characters. I feel like this was a debut novel and it very much felt like a debut novel, but not in a good way. I didn't really care for the romance that was featured in the book. I felt a little bit, I don't know, bored with it, a little cliche. So I decided not to waste my time with this one. Now on to my 2-star reads. I only had 2, thankfully. These should have been DNFs because I did give them a 2-star rating, but I'm, improving and putting books down when I'm not enjoying them, but I'm not perfect. So the first one we have is The French Honeymoon. This is by Anne-Sophie Juano. I originally was gonna listen to this book while on my honeymoon because I thought, oh, it'd be interesting to like read one that's centered around someone's honeymoon, but that's like a thriller. And I'm glad I didn't because this book was just so bad. Like, I finished it because I wanted to know the ending, but I just feel like it was ridiculous. It was over the top, not very realistic. I didn't care for any of the characters that were in this book. I like not a single one. We're following 3 different perspectives, but it was like decent enough to finish and like know the ending. But could I even tell you the ending now? Not at all. Then my other 2-star rating was Only Lovers in the Building by Nadine Gonzalez, which is not surprising because I'm not a huge romance reader and this book was a romance book. I thought maybe I would like it because it did have something to do, I think, with like books or something, or it had to do with, it took place in Miami at this place called The Icon, and I thought maybe I would be into it because of the setting. But unfortunately, I just found it very boring, didn't really care about the romance, and yeah, this one I should not have picked up, but I got sucked in because the cover is so pretty on this one. So I'm glad I only had 2-star reads. That's only 5% of my reading, not bad. So now we're on to the 3-star reads. The 3 stars made up about a quarter of my reading at 23%. I had 9 3-star books over the summer. Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, the 3rd book and final book in the trilogy featuring Emily Wilde by Heather Fawcett. This is a cozy fantasy series. I feel like I enjoyed the first book the best, and the other 2 didn't seem super necessary, but I think they were fun and I don't regret having read them. Miss Caroline Bingley, Private Investigator by Kelly Gardner and Sharmini Kumar. This audiobook I listened to was set in like the Pride and Prejudice time, and we're following Caroline Bingley, one of the characters who is featured in Jane Austen's novels. And I read this during Jane Austen July, and I enjoyed this book. If the authors put out other books that were like similar to this, I feel like I would pick them up. We're following Caroline Bingley as she's in this like cozy mystery type of vibes. I feel like because I read another book that did something similar to this that I loved way more than this book, it made me give this one a lower rating just because I love the other one so much. The Woman in Suite 11 by Ruth Ware. I gave this one 3 stars as well. I am going to be watching the first book in the series adaptation on Netflix, The Woman in Cabin 10. That one came out years ago, and I enjoyed reading that book when it came out. I never thought that there would be a sequel. I know there's probably only a sequel just so they can make a movie out of it, but that's okay. I just thought the book was okay. It just was kind of wasn't super necessary to have another book in the series. Like, it was fine exactly where it is. I hope they don't continue it again because I feel like it'll be very gimmicky. I finally tried Frida McFadden out. Everybody keeps recommending me to read The Housemaid. So I actually read The Surrogate Mother first, and then I read The Housemaid. I gave both of them 3 stars because I feel like they're interesting. They kept my attention, but I can't really remember anything about them after the fact. I feel like these are just very good popcorn mystery thriller books that are entertaining and that you aren't meant to be the greatest books of all time, but they are fun. We have The 100 Wells of Sulaga by Aisha Haruna Atta. This book has sat on my shelves for so long, so I'm so glad to have finally read it. It's not that long of a book, but it did take me a while to get through, and it just overall wasn't super memorable. I remember we followed like 2 main characters, and it was set in Ghana during the like 19th century, where it was like pre-colonial and there was a lot of stuff to do with like slavery. And I just thought this one was just okay. I read one book that I have been seeing everywhere lately, and it's making its rounds, but it's not like it's a book that came out recently, and that was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. The translator is Ross Schwartz. This book, I went in with high expectations because I've been seeing it around so much, and it was getting like a new anniversary edition, and I did not like this book. I probably shouldn't have even given it a 3-star rating, maybe more of a 2, but because it was a novella and so short, I finished it. I just felt like I left it feeling just so underwhelmed, and I don't know, maybe I just didn't go in with right expectations. I didn't really read any synopsises before I read the book because I didn't want any potential spoilers. The Secret Book Society by Madeline Martin was a historical fiction book that takes place in London in 1895, and we're following Lady Duxbury, who kind of curates this group of women to start a book club together, and each of them kind of really need this club in a different way because of certain things that she's observed going on in each of their lives that they could kind of help each other with. And I would say this is more of like a heartwarming type of book. I enjoyed it for what it was, but it's not like one of my favorite books of all time, but I would be open to picking up other books by this author in the future. And the last 3-star book I was going to share with you guys is This Book Will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead. You may have seen or heard of In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife, that was pretty popular, that came out a couple years ago. I enjoyed this book. I feel like this is one that was almost a 4-star read. It was a very high 3-star rating for me. I would definitely pick up other books by this author. We're following this major crime that happens and the true crime detectives that kind of help solve it. Our main character gets kind of thrown into this world of true crime as a grief coping mechanism, and then it becomes like very much encompassing her whole life. And I thought it was very interesting, although some parts I did find kind of predictable. I did enjoy the story overall itself. So now we've come to the bulk of my summer reading, and that is the 4-star ratings. I gave 49%, so let's just say an even 50% of my books that I read this month a 4-star rating, which I think is pretty good. I read 19 4-star books, so let's just get straight into them. I won't be able to talk about these too long because there are a lot of them. Like I said, go back to my wrap-ups maybe if you want to get some more in-depth reviews, because this is not gonna be an in-depth review. We have The Girls Who Grew Big by Leila Motley. You may know her other book that was very popular and like award-winning, Nightcrawling, that came out a few years ago. This one takes place in a small town in Florida, and we're following this group of young ladies who are teen moms and the problems and things that they have to deal with. I read Before I Let Go and This Could Be Us, book 1 and 2 in the Skyland trilogy by Kennedy Ryan. This is a contemporary romance series. I really enjoyed these 2 books, and I will be picking up the 3rd one soon. These all take place in, I think Atlanta was where the story was set. I could be wrong. And each book follows a different friend in this girl group friend trio. Red Seas Under Red Skies is the 2nd book in the Gentleman Bastard series by Scott Lynch. I really enjoyed this continuation in the series where it's following these thieves and con artists and heists and stuff. So if you're into that mixed with some fantasy elements as well, I think you would really enjoy this series. A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, I gave a 4-star rating to. This is the 2nd book in the Akatar series. I feel like I don't have to say too much about that series, as you either love it or hate it. I'm enjoying the series for what it is so far. I don't think it's the best books of all time, but I am having fun being in this world. The Tiny Things Are Heavier by Esther Ifesinachi Okonkwo is following the story of a Nigerian woman who comes to the United States, I believe, to like go to school. She's in her early 20s or so, and we're following a few different relationships that she has, and then eventually like returning back to Nigeria. This book was good, but after like more reflection on it, I find that it's not as memorable as I wish it could have been. But this book does touch on a lot of heavy and tough themes, I would say, like mental health and grief. Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Wang. This book was really interesting. It was like a mix of slightly like sci-fi, but also some like literary art world vibes and themes. And this was a very interesting study on friendship and potentially toxic friendships as well. Jane Austen and Her World by Josephine Ross. This is a very short novella, all on a biography of Jane Austen. I enjoyed it. It was very quick to the point and had like nice little pictures and stuff included as well. I purchased this book in London at the National Portrait Gallery Museum. The Woman in the Wallpaper by Laura Jones was a historical fiction novel set in Paris, or like around France, and mainly in Paris though, in the 1788. And we're following a few different characters from different ranks in class around this time. It takes place like around the Revolution. We're following the story of 3 different women, and through wallpaper, interestingly enough, how certain patterns in life can be repeated. Jane Austen's Bookshelf, a rare book collector's quest to find the women writers who shaped a legend by Rebecca Romney. This was a really enjoyable nonfiction book looking at these different female authors who would have been influences on Jane Austen's writing in her time. Some of them I hadn't heard of before, and a lot of them I hadn't. And learning some of their backstories and stuff were so interesting and fascinating. And it's definitely one of those cases where sometimes like fact is definitely stranger than fiction, or not. I think maybe I'm saying that quote wrong, but I think you guys know what quote I'm talking about. A Memoir of Jane Austen by James Edward Austen Lee. I know I have a lot of Jane Austen books in this summer reading wrap up because I like to take part in Jane Austen July in the summer. And this was a memoir about Jane Austen from someone who's actually related to her nephew. And there were also like some of her own letters that were included in this memoir, which was cool. The Dream Hotel by Layla Leilami was an interesting book, kind of like looking at how potentially government surveillance could work. We are following these women who are put into a thing called risk assessment, or pretty much an algorithm is used to decide how likely you are to commit a crime or not, and even things like your dreams can affect that. So that was a very fascinating take and something that was also kind of scary. Plum Bun, A Novel Without a Moral by Jessie Redmond Fawcett is the first book that I read from a new publisher called Quite Literally Books, who aim to promote little known or kind of fallen by the wayside women authors, classics in that kind of range. And this book was published in 1928. I enjoyed this book. It has to do with the subject of passing. We are following two sisters, and one of them uses passing to pretty much like get ahead in life and be able to get access to things that she wouldn't normally be able to. But it's very interesting kind of her rationale and how she views it in her mind. I don't know. I did enjoy this book, and I can't wait to read the other two books that I have from this publisher because I think what they're doing is really cool. I listened to the audiobook for Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward, and this is a book I feel like I definitely need to revisit again, and actually reading it with my eyeballs. I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong with the ebook, but I just feel like this is a book that I would have gotten even more enjoyment out of had I been like physically reading it. Just sometimes things work out that way, but this book takes place in kind of like a road trip through Mississippi, as we're following this one family and different things in the past that have led them to where they are now. I don't want to say too much and give too much away because I did go into this book not knowing that much, and I think it's better to do that. At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop, translated by Anna Moscovakis. Was a very short novella, and it takes place like following the French army during World War I. And the main character, his name's Alpha. He's a Senegalese man who's left his village, and he's fighting as like a chocolate soldier. And this book was, even though it was short, was very impactful. His experience going to war and witnessing one of his close friends, be killed right next to him, and how he explores a grief from that. And I mean, this is such a short novella, I don't really want to say too much as well, but this was a really good book, and I'm very glad I picked this up. The Benevolent Society of Ill-Mannered Ladies by Alison Goodman was definitely one of the highlights of my summer reading. I really enjoyed this book. It's set during Regency London, and we're following two twin sisters as they somehow find themselves involved in solving these mysteries and kind of just helping the people who are disenfranchised in their society, and I just loved them. I found all the characters in this book to be great, and I just can only say good things about this book and only recommend this book to you guys. One Yellow Eye by Lee Radford. This book was a science fiction book, and there's this like virus that spread throughout the whole I forget where this book takes place, in London, UK, and it's kind of like a zombie like virus, and they pretty much like kill everybody, but they're still trying to figure out, life has gone back to normal, and they're trying to figure out like how to prevent this from happening again. Our main character, her husband, was infected with this, and she's been hiding him pretty much in her apartment under sedation while she's trying to find a cure to be able to have him return back to his normal self. I thought this book was a very interesting read. If you like I Am Legend, then I feel like you'll like this book. Bittersweet by Hattie Williams was an interesting look at a relationship when it has a imbalanced power dynamic. We're following a young book publicist, and she's having an affair with her literary idol that she works with. This was very fascinating, interesting read. Normally, I felt like this book I went into 50-50 if I was even going to finish it or not, but it was just very readable and so interesting. Lastly, we have a short story collection, which is the only one I read this summer. I don't really tend to pick up a lot of short story collections, but I decided to pick this one up. It's called Where Are You Really From by Elaine Sushu. She also wrote Disorientation, which I read, that came out a couple years ago, and I enjoyed that one. I decided to just like pick up one of the short stories, see how it went. I was open to DNFing if I didn't enjoy it, but I actually found all of these very interesting. I still don't find short stories as my favorite form of reading, but I do like to read them here and there. And this was one that, if you are into short stories, I think that you will really like this collection. So those were all of my 4-star reads for the summer. And then last but not least, we have my 5-star reads. Unfortunately, I only have 2 to share with you guys. I wish there was more, but I will take what I can get. And so the first one we have is called The Art of a Lie. And this one is by Laura Shepard Robinson. This book takes place in 18th century London, and this book definitely has a very much a web feel to it. We're following our main character, and she is a owner of a confectionery shop. She's recently become a widow, and then they're trying to like figure out how her husband was killed. It seems like he was killed in a violent street robbery. She's really struggling in her business, and women in that trade were just very much looked down upon in this time. The local magistrate finds out that her husband had all this money in the bank, and he thinks that maybe he got this money somehow not right. So he's trying to like confiscate this money, and she needs it. But then there's this other guy, William Devereux, and he was a friend of her husband's, and he is trying to help solve like the mystery surrounding his death. And I just thought this book was so good, and even though I just told you all that, it's still not even what the book is about. So if you guys love books that have twists and things in them and things that you don't see coming but still like really well written, I would definitely recommend this. I listened to this one on ebook, as well as my other 5-star read, which is Finding Grace. This one was written by Loretta Rothschild. This book messed me up so much. I have not cried this much in a book and this long, and I don't even want to tell you guys anything about it. Like, don't go into it knowing anything. I didn't go into it knowing anything. Just know, like, it's just so good. And I feel like I did enjoy the first part of the book more than the last, but that's not to say like that the last part was bad at all. It's just like the book started off so like on go that it just felt a little bit slower in some parts, and towards the end did seem maybe not the most realistic, but I just enjoyed it. It was just so entertaining, so much fun, so much things that it kind of considers on just even questions about morality and stuff. And it's so hard to even if I wanted to describe the book to you guys, it'd be pretty much impossible to do it without giving spoilers. So I would recommend not to read anything about this book and just trust the recommendations of everybody who is really enjoying this book, and just go and read it and see for yourself. Cross that I'll have better luck in the last quarter of the year, because I do want to have some more 5-star reads to include on my best books of the year. But if I have to, I'll pull some books from my 4-star reads if necessary. So those are all the books that I read over the summer reading months. That was quite a lot. I hope this video isn't too long, and I hope you guys that enjoyed seeing all of my books this summer that I read. There were almost 40 books, which is crazy. It was 39. I should have just read one more so that I can make an even 40, but you know, I'm happy with what I got to. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!